Hello, I'm Peter Carter. I live in the Southern Gulf Islands, British Columbia, and this video is the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain Tar Sands Oil Pipeline Project, this video being the oil tanker section of the project from Vancouver. The video features a very excellent, informative report from the Globe and Mail called Weigh Anchor. And this first image here shows all the present day tanker traffic through the Salish Sea. These are the waters of the Salish Sea. And here is Vancouver, BC, where the Trans Mountain Tar Sands Oil Pipeline is proposed to end, and from there on to unload vast amounts of tar sands oil into these huge oil tankers to pass down here and then out to the open Pacific headed for China. Before you start watching the video, my narration of the text that goes along with the video, it's very important for me to say something about risk and probability. So here's the Globe and Mail image with all the tanker traffic, and I put here a normal map so that you can orientate yourself to where we are and where these tankers go. All of this area in darker blue is the Salish Sea, and there's the Strait of Georgia between Vancouver Island and the city of Vancouver. And here's the Strait of Juan de Fuca from Victoria out into the open Pacific Ocean. Now here's the thing I want to talk to you about very briefly, and that is you'll hear risk and you'll hear probability in this video. You'll hear me narrate low probability. That's misleading. Risk, the standard risk formula, is that risk equals probability times magnitude of an event. So in this video, the magnitude is a catastrophic event of one of these large super tankers going aground and rupturing its oil and contaminating all this marine area. So a low probability of an extremely damaging event is a high risk. So where you hear me say the risk is low probability, that means it is a high risk. Here you see all the various tanker routes, and you see how busy this is in this particular very sensitive area here. This is the Salish Sea. Now, this video is being made possible by the Globe and Mail, their video animated report called Weigh Anchor. They say here that the expansion project could bring billions in new revenue, but it would also mean an increase in coast-to-port tanker traffic, and with that, an increased risk of oil spills. We follow a tanker as it threads the needle from Burnaby to the open ocean. 250 commercial vessels a month traverse these waters. Currently, about 4 of those are traveling into Kinder Morgan's Westbridge Marine Terminal and carrying crude oil back out to the Pacific. The Trans Mountain project and expanded capacity would mean a 7-fold increase in the number of oil tankers coming and going. At this point, I must mention the southern resident killer whale pod, which is unlikely to survive the increase in oil tanker traffic as reported by experts. The National Energy Board on the Kinder Morgan application found in their report that there would be significant adverse effects on the southern resident killer whales from the additional tankers. All recent studies of the resident pods have identified marine noise around the Strait of Georgia and Juan de Fuca Strait as one of the stressors threatening their survival, in addition to the lack of Chinook salmon, contaminants accumulating in their bodies, and degradation of their habitat. Now, I live on Pender Island, and this is the wonderful sight that we get on Pender Island. It is a fact that the Kinder Morgan tanker traffic route is exactly the same as the route followed by the southern resident pod of AUKUS. The Port of Vancouver is the most active in Canada. Ice-free and deep water, it is home to terminals for all manner of cargo, chemicals, containers, bulk goods, and crude oil. Westbridge Marine Terminal is on the South Shore in Burnaby, BC. A proposed new dock at Westbridge Marine Terminal will triple the loading capacity. Aframax-sized tankers are the largest class vessels allowed in the port, at 245 meters in length and with a maximum capacity of 80,000 to 120,000 tons. These are clearly, as you can see, massive oil tankers. A new pipeline will further connect the dock to Burnaby Terminal, Kinder Morgan's tank farm on the far side of Burnaby Mountain Conservation Area, and this being Burnaby Mountain. And the whole Trans Mountain expansion project will see the twinning of an existing pipeline from Edmonton, in other words from the Alberta tar sands, increasing the full capacity of the pipeline system from 300,000 barrels a day to 890,000 barrels a day. Tankers must travel 80 nautical miles, 148 kilometers, in and out of these narrow, busy waterways. This is these huge oil tankers, of course. For large vessels, an escort is mandatory. 2 C-span tugboats are tethered to this Aframax class vessel. This particular ship is flying a Marshall's Island flag. That's a flag of convenience, of course. And the international crew may have little experience in these waters. Canada requires locally trained pilots to be on the bridge of commercial vessels of this size. In the narrowest part of the route, on the border between Burnaby and Vancouver, 2 bridges stand 110 meters apart, the second narrowest rail bridge and the Iron Workers Memorial Bridge. The concerned professional engineers, a group with expertise in the bridge's design, notes that since its completion in 1925, it has been knocked out of commission 5 times by cargo ships. Aframax-sized tankers are 5 times heavier than those cargo ships. The group estimates that such a vessel could knock the rail bridge right off its foundations, carrying it to the Memorial Bridge. Between the second narrows and the Lionsgate Bridge, the Vancouver Harbor is alive with pleasure craft, container ships, passenger ferries, and float planes landing and taking off. 30 years ago, larger ships would be allowed in these waters without tugs or modern navigational aids, but the Exxon Valdez disaster changed everything. In 1989, the oil tanker Exxon Valdez struck a reef in Alaska, releasing 44,000 tons of oil. The Canadian government rewrote the rules to improve shipping systems to reduce risk, improve spill response, and ensure that the industry was responsible for the costs. According to Kinder Morgan, the risk of a major oil spill on this route is small, once in 473-year event. To put that into perspective, a major spill would be 3,000 times larger than an incident in 2015 where the cargo ship Marathassa discharged more than 2,800 liters of fuel into Vancouver's English Bay. But critics say the risk has been dramatically underestimated. The City of Vancouver, in its submission to the National Energy Board, tabled a report showing the risk of a marine oil spill in the 50-year life of the Trans Mountain Expansion project is between 16 and up to 67%. In its technical risk assessment for Kinder Morgan, the advisory group Det Norske Veritas pinpointed several locations where oil spills would be most likely to occur, and despite the heavy traffic concluded that a collision in English Bay was a low probability. It determined there is a risk of collision with the high levels of crossing vessel and ferry traffic out in the open waters past Roberts Bank. However, this is where the safety restrictions imposed by the port are reduced. As the Aframax-class vessel being towed out of port heads past the emerald green point of the University of BC lands, one of the tugboats peels off, its escort duties complete. Out on the Strait of Georgia, the remaining tugboat's tether is dropped, and it paces the tanker for 35 nautical miles in ocean water. The tugboat resumes its tethered escort as the two vessels enter the stretch between British Columbia's Gulf Islands and Washington State's San Juan Islands. The tug lowers its speed, winding through Boundary Pass and then Harrow Strait. By now, this shows the dark of an early winter evening has set in. This is the same spot where Kinder Morgan imagined its own credible worst-case oil spill disaster. As laid out in their 2013 risk assessment, a supertanker veers off course, the remaining tugboat unable to counteract, the vessel crashes into a reef, spilling 103,700 barrels of toxic diluted bitumen. The scenario envisions a plausible but highly unlikely spill, with 55% of the bitumen lost to sea. Critics say the percentage of oil lost would be much higher. As the tanker passes the city of Victoria, a pilot boat pulls up alongside, matching its speed. The Canadian pilots on board change vessels using a ladder, their duties now complete. The tanker approaches the final risk analysis point, the Juan de Fuca Strait at Race Rocks, where marine weather can be strong. A collision with another vessel was determined to be a low probability here, but possible now that the additional pilots have left. And after a 10-hour journey, this is where the remaining tugboat ends its duties. The tanker must now make its way into the Pacific alone.